to do a few little tips this afternoon. I think that routine is an important part of raising children. And some of you are going to look at me cross-eyed and say, I don't have any routine because we travel a lot, or this is our schedule, we don't do this. But most of you have a pretty well stay-at-home routine. As a rule, we do, but there'll be days that gets messed up. So it's very important that you establish a routine in your home, whatever that is. Now, most of you are going to rise early in the morning. You're going to start the day. Some of you are homeschooling parents. That's a whole different story from those of you who send your children out to school. But whatever you do, you are the mom. You're the keeper of the home. We've already been told that today. And so you're going to be the one that establishes that routine in your home. And whether you stick with it or not, I'm not saying this has to be stuck with 24/7 all the time, because you'll be a nervous wreck if you do that. But you have some kind of routine that you stick with. We get up at a certain time. We do this. We have breakfast. Everybody's done that for way back when. So you establish your routine and you stick with it as much as possible, because children need that. And your family needs to know that this is proof of what we're going to do today. And then if you vary from that, that's okay, but come back to it. Boundaries. We need boundaries in our home, all of us. So boundaries and consequences kind of go together, but make sure that you and your husband sit down and establish boundaries at a very young age. This is our desire for our children. This is how far and sometimes that's a journey as you go. You just see where the boundaries need to be set. You just don't always see them point blank at the very first. And it does depend a lot on how you were raised. Your husband was raised differently, so sometimes you have to come to a happy medium there of where you're going to set your boundaries. But boundaries are important for children, because if you just let them do what they want, we've already heard that this morning, then everything's just going to be chaos. Chaos, we all know, is when we can't perform. I cannot perform with chaos around me. And we ran a Christian school for 21 years. And it was a practice with me with the children who had chaos at their desk. We had the flag system where if you needed attention, you put the flag up. If I went to a desk and it was just chaos, papers flying everywhere, I'd say, excuse me, I'll be back in a little bit. When you get your desk cleared up, then we can think and we can work together. But we're not going to uncover whatever you needed from me here. So it taught them that we can't work with chaos. They didn't even know what they were asking for, hardly. They just knew they needed help. Help. I'm feeling chaotic here. So try to avoid chaos as much as possible. That doesn't mean you're the perfect homemaker and everything's in place everywhere. That just means you've got some order to your home. So establish order in your home. We talked about chores this morning. Everybody kind of handles that differently. Believe me, I've been through the charts. I've been through the experiences, spending time with them. I've been through all those, and there were different times. I tried to live inspirationally, and believe me, I didn't do it all right, because one child saying, you're not spending time with me, and or this one gets more time, or whatever. So it's just a juggling experiment. Raising your children is just an experiment that you're just begging God to help you. And that's why I'm saying you better live inspirationally, meaning you better stay on your knees and you better pray just every day that the Lord will guide you and give you wisdom, because you can do all of these things that we tell you to do and still feel like you're coming up short, because it's just easy. And it is the devil's business to make you feel like your home is a chaotic place, or it's not working, your children aren't responding, all these things. You know how you felt at different times in your life. I'm a terrible mom, most famous of all. I'm a terrible mom. You have a day that you cry all day. You're not in control. I'm a terrible mom, can't do it. You tell your husband that night, he has to get you back to the place where, yes, you are. What you're doing is right. You're staying home with your children. You're doing the right thing. I tell my grown daughters today, which they don't call a whole lot, but they do call, and I say, what should I do, Mama? I said, do the right thing. Put one foot and step in front of the other one. Do what you're supposed to do the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. Instead of just looking out there and just thinking, it looks so big, it looks so daunting, to get these children raised. I said, just do the right thing. Just keep going. So I did want to talk a little bit about quiet time. I feel like that it's been touched on as well this morning, but quiet time is a very important part of your life to keep chaos out of your life. So make that part of every day, if possible, a quiet time for your children, because they're going to be well, if they're in school, they're going to be on that, and then hopefully we'll have an outside time. We'll talk a little bit about that. But quiet time just means that you bring their thoughts, give them, somebody called it boredom, give them time to even be bored, but give them things to work with. Books, I'm a great lover of books. I think books are very important, that your children need to learn to read early if possible, and that's an avenue that in quiet time they can access good books, history books, science books, Bible story books, all kinds of books. Just as long as you put the right kind of thing in front of them, it really helps them to, and it calms them. Reading will calm children. Music is another thing I would like to mention in quiet time. I'm a firm believer in using music to calm children. If they're very active or everybody's fighting or whatever, just set them all down, turn on. I love classical music. Just a calm, soothing music. Set them down, turn it on, say everybody's going to be quiet for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Bring them all back down. Whether they're fighting or they're upset or whatever. I just am a firm believer in bringing that music into, but not everybody's a lover of music, but to me it's a very important part of children's lives too. We can put on even children's songs. To me, I like for them to have that time where they're active songs and they learn all the good active songs, but that is not necessarily a quiet time. So the quiet time is when you just bring them all in, set them down, and you just make sure everybody's quiet. Doesn't hurt them a bit, and it helps. It actually does help. I found that to be true. I hear mothers talking all the time about screen time. It's the thing that's going on nowadays. How much screen time do you give your children? Well, they're going to live if they don't have any. So if you one of those that believe they should not have any screen time, then that's fine, and it certainly should be very, very limited. And I have read, and I know this to be true, that if you give a phone to a child before bedtime, even for a game or whatever, you're just pumping them up. So don't do that, handing the phone to your child at any time, as far as I'm concerned. It's not safe, but don't put them on games, don't put them on things on the phone just to occupy their time, because those things are made just to, pump your children up and, just excite them. Well, there's times for that. There's all kinds of activities that will inspire children to be active, but be very careful with screen time. I'm just saying. And before bed, if you want your children to rest, do not, at least 2 hours if they go to bed, do not let them look at anything that just the colors are flashing and all that stuff is just, bringing chaos to their mind. Talk a little bit about playtime. Well, let's talk about education first. My children grew up in a Christian school for the most part. Our youngest daughter, we homeschooled her for 2 years before she graduated. So there's a little bit of difference. But however you're training your children and educating them, be involved. Be very, very involved with their education. Even if it's in a private school, you volunteer every bit that you can to try to stay involved with your children so that they know that you care and so that you know what's going on. So it's not always safe at home to have your children homeschooled at home. You better know where they're at and what they're doing at all times of the day. You don't just send them all upstairs alone as they grow up. They find things to do that are not, healthy. So you make sure you know where your children are at all times. That doesn't mean you're on their tail. It means that you put them out in the yard, then try to have a window that you check every few minutes. Make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many you go out there? They're right there. I know what they're doing. Or go outside and check on them. So, and certainly if you've got them in another school, make sure you know the people, the parents, the teachers, whatever. Make sure you're very involved with your children. I'm a firm believer in being very involved in education. A little bit of, some people get offended at the word fantasy, but dreaming, being creative is important to children. They have imaginations. So don't squelch that. Encourage them to be imaginative. So I think that dress up for girls. We were talking about heroes and all that, but little girls love to dress up, with hats and just little dresses, long pioneer clothes or, whatever. They love to dress up and imagine. We recently have one little a granddaughter that loves anything pioneer. She just wishes, and a lot of our little girls do. They just wish they lived in those days, especially if they read those kinds of books. And so she always has a big time. She has probably the biggest imagination of any of our grandchildren. But she I don't know, was on a journey out, had her baby, and her baby died, and she just goes on and on with her imagination. And I kind of just enjoy watching it because it's good for them, to imagine happenings in their life, even if they are tragic, they're still imagining, So we call her Poor Mary because whatever she plays, she's the poor person. She's the one who suffers. She's hungry. Her child died. So but she's a happy girl. When she imagines, that's what she imagines. So, which teaches me that she's a very compassionate child. She really thinks about dark, heavy things. And her mother just recently had misfortune of having a miscarriage, and she was the most grieved of all the children because she really felt it. She really wanted that baby, and so it was really upsetting to her. And then she had a dream about it. Her mom told me she had a dream about it. Next morning she got up and got her baby and held the baby all day long. She said, Mommy, I dreamed about the baby. It had this color of eyes and this kind of hair. And you could tell it was a comfort to her, So let your children live in somewhat of a dream world. Don't encourage, if they're that kind of child that lives there all the time, then you've got to go earth to here often. Bring them down. And if that child wants to read all the time, doesn't want to live in the real world, then pull some of the reading. I had some of those. No, we're not going to read this afternoon. We're going to do realistic things. So again, got to find out what your child's personality is. So, of course, books. We talked a little bit about books and the priority. I would like to say something about books. I feel like it's important to keep your books in a special place in the house. Don't let them just throw the books around everywhere. Treat them with care, and that way you keep your books for the next child. And these Usborne books are not cheap. If you're buying any of those, you certainly don't want them to be throwing them around. But even books, period, and it's kind of like the Bible. You treat it with great, great care, and that's much more important than books. But I always had a special shelf for books, and the books were always returned to that shelf, and so that they knew where to go find their books. And when we always had reading time, I made it a priority, just about every day that we had reading time. So I would say treat your books with great respect. Experiences with your children. We were talking about things to do with your children one-on-one. I firmly believe in one-on-one with your children as you find time. Some of us are more structured and we can do it by the day like Amber does. Some of us, we just have to do it when the time arises. This is the time to pay attention to this child. They demand it or need it for now. But experiences are great. Lucinda's question about what to do. You just constantly searching in your mind, what can I do with this child? Or riding the four-wheeler was mentioned, or hiking. They love hiking. Take a little short hiking trip when your husband gets home. I'm going to be gone for 10 minutes. We're going to go out, we're going to pick up leaves. We're going to, moms just, that's where you live inspirationally. Get a telescope, go out right before they go to bed, watch the stars, just a little cheap telescope. Just anything that child, or maybe another child, will be plugged into. Find out what their love language is. And like Amber said, that's a very good idea. I really believe that social life is important to children, especially those of you who homeschool. I'm sure you've heard this and you know this, but you can become so secluded with your own little society in your home that your children suffer from social interaction. So plug into a co-op. I would encourage you to plug into a co-op or a group. And sometimes that's a burden to you, but it's necessary that church is an avenue, but they don't always get as much as they need there. So outside the home, make sure you find something to plug into that's safe and that you're comfortable with. And if you don't do that, I would say bring up your comfort level to where you can invite people to your home. And so that's very hard for mothers to do that are very busy. Doesn't mean it has to be a grand experience. It just simply means that I'm going to invite a family over that has children, and we're going to interact tonight. If you're not comfortable, bring them in your home, have a winter roast outside. I encourage everybody to have a fire pit and build fires. It's just something about a campfire that just draws people together, and children love it. Absolutely love it. And something I do with my grandchildren, I created because they live in the South and it's pretty hot outside, so you just get to a big blazing fire is not really inviting most of the time. So when I go down there, sometimes we build this little tiny fire, about this big. You can build it in a skillet if you want. Go outside, build you a little tiny fire, and we get fondue forks, or those little tiny forks, and we roast tiny marshmallows, the little bitty marshmallows, like that. They thought that was the most fun, because we didn't do a great big fire. It was too hot for that, but we did those little bitty fires, and then we got little bitty pieces of chocolate and little bitty pieces of crackers, and we did everything tiny. Children love tiny stuff. And so you get creative with, things to do with your children, to draw them in and have fun times with them. So I'm not condemning you for homeschooling your children. It's a wonderful experience, but they really do need that social interaction. So I would just encourage you, however, and even if they're going to a private school, public school, you still need to learn how to interact with other families and other people, because it gives them social skills that they don't always learn except if they're in your home. So when you're the host or hostess, as you teach your children how to host other people by your example. So it's a good thing to do. I see a lot and hear a lot about mothers creating this outdoor time for your children. Yes, they need to be outdoors a lot. It's very important to them to spend time outdoors. Sandboxes, dirt piles, playhouses, swings, bicycles, races. Encourage anything that's active outside. They need that. It makes them so tired when they come in at night, and then they want to go to bed. So, and they sleep well because they've had that fresh air and that exercise. So anything that keeps them active like that is good. A lot of outdoor time as much as possible. We talked a little bit about music. Lessons, you can't always afford that, but whatever, if you play the piano, or I encourage everybody to get a piano in their home, but if you're not comfortable with that, then sing. Do a lot of singing with your children, because they love to sing. I don't care if they can carry a tune or not, they love to sing. So sing with your children from a very small age. Learn to sing the little children's songs, the little Sunday school songs. Let them learn them. They have a phenomenal memory. They will learn from a very young age. We had one daughter that was 3 when we started our Christian school, so she was in the kindergarten group with the rest of them. She learned all the scripture memory, all the songs, everything that the 5-year-olds learned, because she was there every day, and all you have to do is just repeat it, a lot. So I think singing is very important to a family. It also draws you together, and songs will come back to them when nothing else will, if you've taught them songs and interacted with words like that are encouraging or positive. But if you can give lessons, I think it's very important that they learn how to read music. Even if you sing a cappella, it's very important that they learn how to read music, so that they can, it's just a good thing for them. But like I say, some of you may not be comfortable with that. So we talked about campfires. Physical touch, we've also covered that as well today. I was just discussing with some people at our table that I did come from that generation where my parents, my grandparents didn't know what the physical touch was all about, because they were so busy making a living and just to make sure their children were fed. They were very, very poor, and a lot of the people that lived during the war and depression, was like that. So they didn't know you were supposed to hug and, all that. You just get in bed and go to sleep, and you get up at 4 o'clock and you do the chores and let's get on with life. My mom and dad, I think, did have probably some regrets that they didn't have that kind of affection from their parents, maybe weren't as close to their parents. My parents did a better job of it, but still didn't know how to do it, because it wasn't in their life. So they had to learn it. So we were privileged to have somewhat of a physical touch interaction. We have this little joke in our house that my brother, after we'd get to bed and get quiet at night, we'd say, "I love you," and he'd go all the way around the house, "I love you, love you, love you," and it was kind of cute. But then also, if you hadn't had the courage to apologize for something you had done wrong for the day to one of your siblings, my brother started, he'd say, "Forgive me of anything I did wrong." And then that would carry to the next room and the next room. "Forgive me if you think I did wrong." It's a joke, family joke today. Like, that was a way around it, wasn't it? So anyway, but physical touch and verbalizing the "I love yous," I think, is very, very important. However, this generation, I think, has tapped into the feelings so much that they lose the discipline. So yeah, it might be a tough time before bed because that child's misbehaved and he's not done what he's done before bedtime, and you're having to discipline right before you go to bed. It's not the easiest time to say, you know, that everything's hunky-dory. So, but you still get that hug in, and that I love you, and that my love is unconditional. And that's another thing you have to prove to your children, that your love is unconditional. And so when you're disciplining, correcting, I would say this. I always use what I call the sandwich method, which was a positive, negative, positive when you're correcting. So if you need to do a correction with a child, start with the positive. You know, you're really good at this, 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 and this. But today, or right now, we have this problem. You have done this wrong, and we need to talk about it. And then end with, but you know, we're going to get through this. You know, the Lord's going to help us. And I always had prayer, tried to have prayer. But then there's times that moms get upset and we raise our voice. So don't set up that bar of perfection up there where you don't ever think you're ever going to do that, because you will. You'll get a time where you just get upset with them. And if you think you're angry and you feel that you're angry, my encouragement's always been go to the other room till you calm down before you deal with it. Try, and that's hard, because you're in the battle. You know, right there, it's me and you've done this, and it's terrible what you've done. So it's easy for you to be reactive and deal with it right there. But I finally learned to do this. I didn't always do this, but go into the next room till you're calm, and then come back in when you can deal with it. So that would be one of my encouragements. And then, but there's times you have to be firm. There's times you do have to raise your voice, because they don't get it. And so they're going to ask you why. My youngest daughter just said the other day, her little boy was learning to sit in a chair at the table. He's 2, almost 3. And he's learning to sit in a chair at the table, and he was wiggling, squirming, and moving around. And she said, Hudson, you're going to have to learn to sit still at the table if you're going to be at the table. And he said, are you mad at me? She was like, she said, I didn't think I raised my voice, but you know, they just get those inflections. You know, they get them. So, devotions with children, depending on their age, but sometimes I think it's great to have family devotion all together, but sometimes it has to be very general. If you have varying ages of children that are from, you know, high to low. We had that in our home. We had 3 children that didn't have one until 9 years later, so she was a tag along, and she really didn't get teenage devotions. Our teenage devotions were pretty serious, and they dealt with life, you know, things that were going on around us, and just, you know, really strong things. And sometimes it would bother her because she didn't know what we were talking about. And for example, I was telling someone this a while ago, one evening we got into a Titanic discussion and worked it into devotion and what happened, sort of a history lesson in with the devotion. And so, you know, it's pretty tragic and pretty terrible story, and not realizing that she's listening to all this. And so we get through it, we thought we had good devotions. I go in to give her bath, and she won't get in the bathtub. She wouldn't. She was horrified. Her eyes were this big, and somehow in that discussion, all she heard was the drowning and the water and all of that. So we had to work through that. And that's when we realized that you can't always, sometimes it's better to put that child to bed. If you're in a real serious discussion, just do the prayer with them, and maybe a Bible story or whatever, and say, you can go to bed, and then we'll continue with the teenagers, because that it can petrify, you know, younger ones, and to talk about serious things. And then she always had a struggle too of trying to be like the older ones, because she just didn't want, that's all she knew was adult life and teenage life, and she just didn't have at church, and you know, when she had little friends come over or whatever, but she tended to not ever be a baby because she just was always wanting the things the adults wanted. So it was kind of hard to know how to discipline her, and how to, because she talked big talk. And you might have a child like that. Like, she was 3, she had misbehaved, and I'd set her down, and she said, so, if the Holy Spirit is what you all say it is, then why is he not helping me to behave? I said, ask your daddy. And he comes home. So see, younger children, they're observing and absorbing a lot more than you think they are. And so you have that type of setting. It can be, one time we never encourage our children to go to the altar really, really young because we'd rather deal with them one-on-one, no telling what they were telling the people at the altar. So we were just like, just let us deal with this. But her grandpa kind of got into going to the altar with her, and so quite young she started going, seeking spiritual help. And one time I was up there with her, and she said, remember the message that was preached on so-and-so time back 6 months ago? And I said, Ashley was like, no, I don't. She said, well, the preacher talked about this, this, and this. And that's what she was at the altar for. She's 5 years old. And I'm like, how did that happen? You know, and she had her absorption of things was way beyond. She was way more mature in lots of things. But then there were times you had to keep her young. She was a child, and you didn't want her to think like that, you know. And you know the little smock dresses that are so cute. They're so classic. Every generation's had little smock dresses, little full dresses, so cute. Well, she had teenage sisters who dressed in skirts and tops. They didn't wear smock dresses. So I didn't realize what was going on, but I loved those little dresses. So she was probably 3 or 4, and I started putting those little dresses on her, you know. She hated them. She called them fat dresses. And she would just cry and cry and cry. I said, why are you crying? These dresses are beautiful. And she said, Mommy, do you wear them? And I said, no. She's like, nobody else wears them, so why do I have to wear them? But we had to make her realize that she was not a teenager. So her daddy did tell her, if you complain about the fat dresses anymore, you'll wear them for 3 days solid. So she quit complaining. And then after we got through that phase, I took them off, you know, because I thought if they bother her that much, it's okay. But we had to prove to her it wasn't her choice that she didn't wear fat dresses. So the ironic part about that is this is the funny story. She had a daughter who, when she was probably 2, she got her little Easter dress. It's one of those dresses. She wasn't old enough to know better. She melted, literally melted. The little 2-year-old just melted in the floor. The little dress, she sent me a picture of the dresses poofed around her. She's sitting on the floor just bawling, crying. She said, Mom, I'm reliving my life. I don't know why this child doesn't like this dress, but somehow she inherited it. I still love those little dresses. So, talk a little bit about meals and cooking and so forth. And, you know, gender, I think that you should teach your boys how to cook, and I think you should teach your girls how to haul wood in. Not heavy stuff where they're pulling and pushing and shoving, but they need to be outside. They need to learn what goes on outside. The guys need to learn what's going on inside because they make good husbands. They know how to make a meal. So I'm just giving you my life experiences. Doesn't mean you have to do it my way, but after they were up about probably 10, 12, I gave them their day in the kitchen. And they planned their meal, and when they were teenagers, I sent my girls shopping. Not with me, but with a kinfolk or somebody, and said, you plan the meal, the menu for the week, and you go shopping for it. And I didn't want to be there. So anyway, they would go with somebody, and they would make their own menu and plan their own shopping trip. And they learned very young that, you know, that this is what you need. You got to have this, this, and this. Another little funny story, I like to incorporate these, but we had one daughter who, quite young, she was cooking supper for us. We were having guests, and she was going to do macaroni. So she got in the cabinet. For whatever reason, I had not used this macaroni for a long time, and it had worms in it. She did not know that she didn't know the worms from the macaroni at that time, so she cooked them all together. And so we have guests, and I didn't look at the macaroni. For some reason, it was a sauce that went over the macaroni or something. I didn't look at it till the bowl came to my place, and then I'm like, I punched on it. I said, "This has worms in it." It's like, oh my Lord, what do we do? So we had to just kind of quietly remove I think we got, how did that happen? Anyway, just without embarrassing her, you know, too much, we had to kind of replace it with something or whatever, or make a recall or whatever. But anyway, it's quite a situation, but that's what you do with the trial and error method. But it is important to teach your children, and you know, by the time when you're in, you have a very busy life, it's good that you can trust that teenage girl to stay at home and cook. You got to be gone somewhere, she's going to be home cooking, she's going to have supper ready. Now my girls, their daughters say, Mom, it's always quoting it as, when I was your age, I was doing this, and this. You know? I said, well, it's true. Your mom was doing this, and this. But this generation can get a little spoiled because we don't do things homemade so much, you know, the generation coming up. So teach them how to, I taught my girls how to do pies. I don't make pies anymore. Hardly ever make pies, but my girls know how to make pies because they learned how to do it the right way. So when we get older, we can just kind of back off from some of that stuff. We have get-togethers, they do it. I don't do it, they do it. So there's some advantages to it as you get older. So, but the guys, they do need that time in the kitchen too, and just give them free, you know, free time in the kitchen. I mean, it's dangerous, put a guy in the kitchen, it really is, a teenage guy, because our son, when he was doing his kitchen duty, if it called for 2 teaspoons of chili powder, he would think 4 tasted better. Or, you know, a hot sauce, yeah, 5 times that much would make it better. So you just sit down and kind of swallow and eat it. Because they tend to enhance it a little bit. Makes good husbands, though. Do try to protect your girls from heavy work duty outside, because I don't think it's proper to send them out there to do all the things that guys do. But they do need to be exposed to it, need to know they can get dirty, and that they can help outside. I believe strongly in consequences, and we talked a little bit about that today, but you know what? I think we've talked enough about that. Let's not go there. Some tips that I think help you to keep your house organized, and all of us are different, and the danger of this generation is there's too much information. You get information overload. So even a setting like this, don't go home thinking, well, this one did it this way, and this, and this. Go home and just seek the Lord how to live inspirationally with your personality and your husband's personality, and do your home accordingly. That's what you need to do, because we're not cookie cutters, and we just don't all handle things the same way. So be comfortable with, as long as you keep a house that's decent, not dirty. I'm saying don't live in a dirty house, because your children will pick up on that. So you keep your house as clean as you can. That doesn't mean you're going to have to, companies at the door, and you're not stuffing your dishes in the dishwasher, you know, at the last minute, because that's going to happen sometimes, or you know, push something under the bed, you know, from time to time. But don't live just with chaos in your home. You know what I'm saying? That's not, your children catch that and they run with it, and then that's the way they're going to do their rooms. I had one daughter that did that. She loved to live with stuff stuffed under her bed. So I just occasionally go in there and start pulling it out, because she kept a clean room. You never knew what was under her bed. So then I had the other one who was a stickler for everything in place. You know, don't move anything. And had one daughter, talk about consequences. One daughter, she was probably 10. She decided she didn't want to pick up her clothes and hang them back up before she went to school in the morning from the night before. So I said, okay. I said, if this happens again, you will wear the same outfit to school for several days. And that worked one time. I did. I made her go to school the next day, and she had a little friend that noticed things like that. She's like, well, you got the same outfit on today that you had on yesterday, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it embarrassed her so bad that from that time on, the clothes were in the closet. So food, this is the way I handle the youngest daughter. The first ones I fought through sitting at the table for hours, making them chew up their food and swallow it. Some children you have like that, they'll store it for 2 hours. It's awful. But we would go about our business, and I'd check back. They'd still have it in there. Sometimes we didn't win the battle. You know, it's so awful that you had to make them spit it out. The younger child, I learned very quickly, and it was very simple. If she didn't want to eat her food, I said, okay, we'll put it in the refrigerator, and tomorrow morning for breakfast we'll have steak and potato salad. You know, whenever you're hungry, that's what we'll do the next morning. And so we did that about 2 times. That's all it took. She started eating anything that was put before her. So there's real quick solutions. So I believe the Lord gave me that, because I was like, oh, you know, I had teenage children to take care of. We were very, very busy, and I didn't have time to sit for 2 hours and watch this child chew her food up. You know, so you find quick answers to things and solutions that work. So consequences, I'm a firm believer in them. You were talking about sugar. I had a sister who used no sugar for one of her consequences. I don't know if it worked or not so much, but she'd pull all sugar from them for a week if they did something bad enough. And she liked it, so I never did that one. But, you know, ladies, I don't have all the answers. Keep your house presentable. If your husband has to bring someone home, keep it to where you can close the door at least, Jeff. I say keep your living room and your kitchen pretty well picked up and straightened up, because that's where, if company drops by, that's what they're going to see. I think you should make your bed, if you want to know my opinion, because you're going to teach your children that it takes how many minutes to make a bed? Keep your bedspread as simple as you want it, and just throw it up and spread it out, and you know, you're good. I'm kind of a stickler for that. Some people disagree with that, but I just think it's more inviting to get back into a bed that's made up than it is one that's rumpled. And so that's what I was taught, and that's what I've taught my children. But we're in a new generation, and sometimes new generation doesn't do that. But anyway, I still think that it should be straightened up enough that when your husband goes into the bedroom, he doesn't feel overwhelmed, that everything's laying around. You have a responsibility towards your husband to keep that room, is depending on you, how you want to decorate it, how you want things to be in the bedroom, but don't let it be chaotic. Again, chaos is just not good for anybody. So don't live in chaos. So keep that bedroom in a shape where he's happy to go into it, he's happy to be with you in the bedroom. And then do keep your living room and your kitchen picked up for the most part, at least where it's presentable. Doesn't mean it has to be. And you know, if you got children, keep it as simple as you want to keep it. It's up to you how you want to live. So if you don't want a lot of decor out, it bothers you, don't want to teach them, I think you should teach them to a degree. Put something out that tempts them so you can teach them no, because they're going to go to a friend's house and it's going to be out. So teach them what no is. We don't pick up those kinds of things. So there's some kind of discipline that goes with that. But you know, it's your house. You live the way you want to live. But you are a keeper of that home. And so you be challenged that with your personality, then your husband hopefully is free to share with you how he feels about some of these things, because it's important to know how he feels about the cooking techniques that you use, what he likes and doesn't like, and what he wants the children to do and not do. And if he's not a person that's open with his feelings like that, encourage him to express his feelings without getting offended. If there's something he's just trying to get down because he don't like it, and you keep cooking it for him, making him eat it, and you should be smart enough to know my husband does not like this, and he's not crazy about it. Now, I did have to teach my husband to eat vegetables because his mom did not. She was a wonderful lady, but she pretty well gave him what he wanted to eat. So I did have to teach him a little bit about that, because we have children coming on and they're going to observe you, and he picked up on it. Now he'll eat anything, absolutely anything. But so I just encouraged him, you know, this is where we're headed here, you know, with children and all that. So let's work together to teach our children, you know, a healthy way to eat and all that. So he was a firm believer in it the rest of his life. But his mom had all boys, and she was a very busy lady, and so she just tended to give them what they wanted to eat. You want fish or hamburger or fried chicken tonight? Those are basically the three things they ate. So when you got married, that's what I had on hand, and we couldn't afford it. So we had to change our tactics. So we worked together to, come up with something that was happy for both of us. So communication with your children, with your spouse, relationship, most important thing in raising your children. And so don't hesitate to express your feelings in the right way to your children. Let them express their feelings to you in the right way, but don't let them be disrespectful. And so you just come to a point where if you're going to get disrespectful with this, you'll not do this to me. So we'll either discuss this later, or you're going to calm down enough that we can discuss it in the right way. So that's already been covered. But those are just a few tips that I've lived a little bit of life and I've come up with. So God bless you all, because it's a big job. It's a big job. But God put you there. He put you right where you are. So don't look at it as a burden. It's not a burden. It is, looking back when you get older, you know you didn't do it all right. But you just know that you did your best. The Lord reminded me of that after our first son was going off to college. And I thought, I have not prepared him enough. You know, I should have had a list. You know, I'm a list person. I should have had a list of all these things he should have learned. And the Lord said, did you do your best? And I said, yes. I have to say, it wasn't perfect, but I did it gave 150. You know, I did everything I knew to do. And he said, well, then leave the rest to me. Just so you turn those children that get into adulthood over, and you just thankfully, whew, they're yours, Lord, and then you watch them make mistakes. And you're like, oh dear. But, you know, that one scripture I've really hung on to all my life is that when they're old, they'll not depart from it. That doesn't mean they might not go out and try some of life. But if you've invested in them with love and discipline and done everything that you know to do, they do come back. Had all my children come back and say, Mom, we didn't understand why you and Dad, or tell both of us, we didn't understand why you guys did this way, but now we understand. And certainly when they have children, and our son not so long ago, he's got sons in university now that drive back and forth from university. He said, Mom, thank you for all those nights you laid awake and prayed. He said, now I'm there and I'm just praying all the time for my boys, you know, for protection, and for when we were there, he's like, he knows I pray. Sometimes he'll call and he'll say, Mom, I know you pray a lot. Would you pray about this for? And it's wonderful when your children call and want you to be invested in the grandchildren's lives. You know that, and it makes me cry because I'm like, I didn't do everything right. I was tough on him. He was the oldest child. I was tough on him because that first one you tend to be very tough on, and sometimes they come out the worse for it. But it touches you when your children come back and say, thank you for doing that. I want to raise my children like I was raised. Those are the best words you can ever hear. And mean it. You know, they mean it. They feel the connection with their parents. And I'll just say this quickly, with your married children, and several of you are there and probably are learning this, but stay connected with your married children without bossing them around. Don't give advice unless you're asked for advice. You can see them make mistakes, but boy, it doesn't end when they walk out of your life. You're probably on your knees more than anything after that. And then you got grandchildren you're praying for. And stay invested with those grandchildren. Stay on call them, stay in touch with them because they need it. We're that matriarch. As long as if you've had a matriarch like you do, this little lady right here, she prays for how many great-grandchildren and grandchildren, and she's asleep. She's tired. But she's done it right. She's done it right. So be encouraged. Yes. It's a beautiful job that the Lord's given us. It's heavy. Sometimes it's really, really heavy, but be encouraged and do a lot of praying. And those times when you're not praying, the scripture says to pray without ceasing. When you're folding those little jeans and you're getting supper on the table, just keep praying. Lord, help me. I haven't had time to get on my knees today, but I'm still praying as you go. So, Lord bless you all.